Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm in California, so it's still morning, but those of you midday elsewhere, welcome to this session on developing a new library mindset and what is it. So I'm here today with Tony Lynn, and I'm Julia Gelfand from the University of California at Irvine, and I'm here with Tony Lynn, who's from Irvine Valley College, and we're from two different ends of the spectrum of academic libraries. I'm at a large R1 research institution, and Tony's at a community college library. But the more that we have been in touch over the last 9 or 10 months, we've realized how much we have in common in terms of the decision making and job sets and skills that we are performing in the transitions we've made at our institutions to online presence and remote teaching and learning. So next slide, Tony. This program really looks at the consequences of that situation and what those decisions have forced us to do. And we're hoping that we'll create, after a few minutes of some introductions that I'll make, an open discussion about what you and your institutions have experienced through this pandemic and what the implications might be for future planning and the known mindset the library will take on. Some of you have returned to libraries that are open now, and others of us are still working in very remote settings, and it looks like we might be for most of this academic year. So what are the implications for the library as we plan? So obviously, these decisions were based on the pandemic and the transition for immediacy to remote learning and teaching and working environments. The current situation is, can we even define a new normal? Not sure what that means, but it's been bounced around in lots of different settings. And what are the long-term solutions? So we hope, as I said, that you'll tell us. And if you can comment in the chat, Tony will monitor those and we'll open it up for some group consensus and comments later, or you can unmute yourself in a few seconds and make it clear, and we'll do that. Also, Helen is in the background. If you're on the Pathable platform, she'll monitor that. Next slide. Next slide. So most of us have put up these signs and made them and revised them. And we're sort of thinking about how long will we be closed? What does it mean when we're closed? What kind of alternative services have we launched to allow for our collections in different formats to be used? What are the concerns and precautions that we're taking? What about reopening when that happens? And plans for going forward, the implications for staffing, for traffic control, for user safety, and safety of the collection and preservation issues. Next slide. So basically, since libraries closed in the early days of COVID, what did we have? We experienced a lack of access to print collections, and many of us terminated our orders for print. We had this sudden transition to online, what created havoc, confusion, chaos, and upheaval as we migrated to appropriate platforms that could be scaled for whatever populations and functions that we needed. And we needed to plug collection gaps, serious ones, primarily from textbook demands and resources that we hadn't licensed previously for whatever reasons that were available as e-resources. And we began to define new values about libraries and how they were being used and what the community demand for that was, the campus community and the academic environment and other public libraries demand elsewhere, and the public's demand elsewhere. So you can see this, I love this slide because it really shows the emptiness of a grocery store shelving, and the inventory is depleted. And here we have a full supply of books in the library that can't be used to the full extent that they usually circulate. And it's kind of just the flip side of the print. So next slide, please. And the current situation I think most of us are living with is you can see the background of my office, and confusion of all that, and just trying to manage a lot of different things in a home space. But we see print, we see various modes of technology, we see pets, interruptions by telephones, children, other inhabitants that we share space with, and we're trying to conduct work in really a different setting that doesn't really allow us to focus as strongly without a lot of interruptions. Next slide. And so most of us are dealing with defining new e-resources to replace the stack of materials that we might have relied upon in the past. We've also been very appreciative of the generous offers that many publishers and vendors have made to libraries over this period of time. And we've been challenged by how to manage that, make sure that they're discoverable by our users, and how to communicate the availability and access to them, how long they'll last. Some of them have ended. Some of them we've done purchase arrangements and licensing for to extend those offers. And we've really had to work with our colleagues to do fast track licensing. And sometimes that's been a little bit different and challenging because it was different protocols than we had in place. And as I noted, the textbook situation and working with our teaching faculty about how to adopt materials that are available and scalable for students who are not on campus. The need for more courseware and software to accompany tools and resources and to provide opportunities for students to share. We've had to really establish that kind of a situation, whether it be through course management software or populating resources in Canvas and to layer things, etc. And we've had to redefine library services, either curtail them or to reestablish them in some capacity. That maybe you are offering online reserves, interlibrary loan might be curtailed to only electronic materials we can borrow. Some of us have been blessed with having memberships in ETOS through the Hati Trust, and we've been able to promote that. We've had different circ options for pickup at curbside, etc., and then having to define what happens when those materials are returned. Some of us have done mail delivery and orders directly from Amazon or other vendors to users and processing those. We've looked at the increase of demand on video and how we can stream more content and make it available for people to use. And we've learned a lot, and we've really extended our sense of what on demand means and how that impacts orders. Next slide. So we have some long-term consequences, and this is sort of goes back to what the title of this session is, about a mindset. What is the nature of the collection that we have now? What is it composed of? Will it ever resume print to the same levels that we were acquiring? And what does that mean for the long-term nature of that collection? What kind of reliance do we have on repository content? Are we accelerating the deposits to those, using preprints more? What about open resources in general, whether it be open access, open source, just promoting openness in general? And what implications, if any, has that had on staffing reconfigurations and the role of and responsibilities that librarians and their colleagues have? Next. So we hope that we can now turn this on to you and ask you to share the experiences that you've had in your libraries and reflect on that, how your job has changed or how you perceive it will continue to change as this experience extends itself? And what are the predictions, if we have any, for this time next year? Do you think you'll be back doing what was comfortable in the past, or do you think that if you return to a physical library environment that you'll be functioning in a different way? And what coping skills have you applied to blend more equanimity between home life and work life? And we hope that you can share that and put some comments or topics in the chat, and Tony will and Helen will share them, or you can unplug and make yourself known on the on your unmute yourselves. So welcome to sharing, and we hope that you'll comment on what mindset is on the horizon for you.
Julia, I'm going to take the opportunity to just ask make an observation and question with my mic. Thank you for the invitation. So I'd like to say that we anticipated the staffing shortages because we had expected retirements, but they came at a very tough time with the tightening of university budgets. So the graying of the profession, whatever you want to call it, in libraries, is come at a tough time. So we wind up doing, 2 jobs or more. So I hope by this time next year, the university's budget at least is stabilized, because it looks like for some, they have a better sense of what enrollment was this fall, and then maybe it won't be as severe. That's because I'm an optimist. Any pessimists can feel free to chime in about it. I'm certainly planning for worst case scenario with regards to collections. That's why I really appreciated this conference. We're definitely going to plan for more cuts.
Cuts and basically being able to buy less or license less or subscribe to less and just have less new content coming in.
Mostly subscribe and license less that were ongoing commitments in prior years.
Other people speculating about the impact on staffing. Are we going to continue to just do more and more with less and less?
Julia, we have a question from Robert Thiessen. He says, what I'm wondering is, will the niche publishers survive? We're currently only buying ebooks, and are wondering if some of the publishers that are only available in print or weird online platforms will be there when this is over.
I think that's a wonderful question. That was one of the things that Tony and I talked about, is who the players will be and whether there'll be more and more mergers and acquisitions to accommodate some of that so that we doesn't get lost entirely. Or do you think it's going to just go into an open environment? Someone said, I think Emily said that she thinks print is going to be obsolete, maybe, or we'll be buying less and less print. Is that assuming that people will not be coming to the library? Other comments I'm seeing. Other budget cuts, I think, is a common theme that people are either already beginning to experience or anticipate, and that could have a major hit on collections. And I wonder, for those of us who are in the audience and here in this session who are from the publisher or vendor side, what are your comments about that? As your potential customer base shrinks due to budgets, what are the problems inherently with your resources?
Julie, while we're waiting for the vendors, we have another question from Kaiser Walker. niche publishers want to shift to an open environment. Where will the funding come from?
Big question. And is that something libraries will pony up to, as they have with other open access experiences, and to fund some of that to demonstrate that we can't constantly buy back everything that's been produced at our institution in different formats? So if we contribute to an open situation, what happens? Or what about this ongoing reliance on repositories and making those more discoverable and promoting that content differently? I'm sorry, I'm missing, it's going very fast on this stream here, on this chat line. Are there other themes? There are many people making comments, but I'm losing some of it.
It looks like there are a lot of comments that are geared towards budgeting, concerns about budgeting for collections and budget cuts.
High on my list of issues and concerns has been the role of the textbook. I think it's really been changing as we've moved to remote teaching and learning. What are other people's issues with that? Every book is, or every work is potentially a textbook, but how can, with adoption situations and revenue streams and publishers who promote those, what is the problem? Are there problems and difficulties?
I come from the community colleges, and one thing we're looking at is open educational resources. I wanted to kind of get a feel for other participants if you are also using open educational resources to kind of solve the textbook, part of the textbook issue.
And how are you rolling that out? Are you using collection funds to as incentives and stimuli with faculty to do that, or is other administrative funds are covering that, et cetera?
There's a comment from Alexis saying that Georgia is strongly encouraging OER. So
yeah, they have a strong program there, a statewide consortia commitment. So I think the small publisher is probably someone's talking about small publishers and niche publishers and those kinds of products, which are increasingly important to have a balanced collection. Do you think that this challenges collection principles going forward in terms of our commitment to a variety of materials when budget cuts are going to be deeper? Oh, here's Jenny Hudson from Gobi. Do you want to say anything more about this? Some of your comments. She says, we've seen a brisk move to almost entirely E. So what does that tell you to publishers who are releasing print first? And if E isn't coming out very shortly thereafter or at the same time, what that means?
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, I think we've definitely seen most people are trying to get as E as possible, and we've either seen material be extremely expensive or just not available. There are quite a few opportunities we've seen where people really wanted an unlimited user access model, and they're just not being released. So they're either having to buy multiple single users, or in some cases there is no e-version available, so they're buying 50 print copies, which isn't very conducive to the world we're in now. So my hope is that as we move forward, we'll continue to see more and more material become available in that method.
Thank you. I think that's the experience of many of us. working with you and with other vendors, the situation, how many copies, the model of Overdrive and others, where, you know, you just keep buying multiple copies. That's not a sustainable situation, and a long-term check, you know, higher turnover rate. There's been some mixed comments about commitments to OERs, and I think not every library has an e-reserve option with their library management system, or they don't have staffing to do scanning projects, or they're not in the library to do that. So it's kind of, some of this is full of obstacles, I think. Jenny, there's a question of, do you expect some of the print sales to come back once we open up libraries again, or do you think?
You know, yeah, we are actually already seeing a lot of the sales of print to come back. I think libraries have definitely seen or found a way to at least ingest and bring them into the library. I mean, I know some people are just putting pallets and empty space in the library that's not being used by students or researchers right now, but we're starting to see them actually buy them. I mean, I've definitely seen some libraries move completely away from print at this point, but oddly, I think a lot of people are still pretty committed to that, especially at the larger library level, where they really feel that they need to address continuing to build a comprehensive collection.
Thank you. Other comments about formats, or are people seeing a higher adoption of video and demand for video?
And
a lot of streaming.
A lot of streaming projects, right? And collections, and is that consuming a lot of money? It's a huge money suck, as somebody says, and I think that's different products, depending on what you're doing. You're having this experience, or you're having to dedicate a bigger chunk of the budget to this, and not knowing, you know, the full sense of where it's going.
Julia, can I say something? I mean, I'm Chris Palazzolo. I'm at Emory, and I made a comment in here, and I've been kind of hearing this a lot at this conference, and I'm a little worried, honestly, about this. I mean, about this complete shift to E and everything, only from a more principled perspective. And I know there's obviously a practical perspective here and a principled perspective. What I mean by that is we are really focusing a lot more, of course, on access over ownership. But when we talking about mergers and acquisitions of things, we have to be very careful, I think, because we have railed against some of those in the past for journal publishers and so forth that reduce a lot of our agency in buying titles and so forth. And moving to E, we have to be really careful that we are allowing for the same sort of borrowing and sharing that we can do with print materials that we owned for the long term and that we're not giving up ownership for. And that's something, you know, I kind of struggle with, in all honesty, about, you know, this very radical shift to E without knowing what the future might look like, and so forth. I don't have an answer. I'm just kind of expressing my concern more than anything else.
What about any other comments to that, or responses? Is that pretty much shared by others, or is that a reflection of a large library versus a smaller collection? Or
hi, my name's Russell Hall, and I work at Penn State, and I would just say maybe you all could go take a look at my article I wrote in CNRL News a few months ago about the very issue about post-pandemic, because I think eventually, might not be next year, might not be the year after, but we will get back to campus. I mean, there will be a vaccine eventually. I feel positive. You know, I mean, worst case, who knows, 2024, I know it's a long way away, but there's still, ebooks have been supposed to be killing print for a long time. And there are other things out there too that could hurt electronic books other than all these other practical reasons folks are saying.
I think that's good. Thank you for your article. I do remember that, and that helped stimulate a lot of discussion at my campus when it came out. So I think there's a number of other things about, there's speculation on my campus and from colleagues at other places that they think there's going to be an online hybrid mentality for coursework in the future. And many faculty have successfully modeled courses that they think there's going to always be a distance presence or a remote option, even in residential environments. I think people will come back to campus for sure in the hopefully not distant future, but there will be a hybrid, and we'll continue to develop profiles and programming in a remote environment. It's been a sort of a it's leveled the playing fields for a lot of people and allowed students to stay home instead of relocate, etc. And for some people, that's been helpful.
This is Emily from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and that's what I was going to say, that more and more universities, from my institution to the University of Southern California, have more and more online programs, and we need to make our resources available to them. So now everybody's in the same situation that all of us librarians who are trying to serve both on-campus and online programs and treat people equally are doing. And I understand the whole issues of we don't own this stuff, we only license it, but I want to make our resources equally available to all our students, whether they are on campus when we finally return to campus or those who are in online programs.
Well, and I think that actually underscores how important context is, of course, because if you're a more residential college, that's actually, we have very few online programs at all. Although, that could easily change. Who knows what the administration is thinking, of course. So context really matters onto how you provide those services as well. So.
Definitely. I just want to say that Tony and I are going to write up some of this and put it in the notes and against the grain, and hopefully it'll continue to stimulate ongoing discussion. I know there's several other programs at this conference on post-pandemic planning and things like that, but this is really about what kind of input can we as librarians who are collections oriented and centric feel about what the new nature of our collections and our ability to continue to make current materials and creative and new materials available. And I think, it does scare me to think about some of the new products that are out, and we just can't entertain them right now because of cost constraints or just not growing in that area yet. Again,
Julia, looks like we're coming up on our
the hour. Yeah.
We have about 10 minutes after this session until they cut us off. But yeah, any final thoughts before we bring things to a close?
Is anyone here currently back in the library environment and back in the office?
I am. Remember, Mississippi State, we've been back since July.
So business has resumed as normal,
I mean,
more or less.
More or less. I'm in, and our doors are locked and we're open by appointment only. So we have limits on how many people can be in the reading room. But the rest of the library is, we still have limits on number of people, I think, who can be in the library at once or in certain spaces. But we're all pretty much back with, masks, socially distanced, and so on. And there's limits on how many students can be in study rooms and group rooms and things like that. But yeah, we've been open and all summer, all semester.
Anything else from the vendor community or publisher community about what you think the near future holds in terms of sales and marketing and developing new products? Are you still going forth with things that were on the launch stage for this year?
Julia, this is Jenny again. I can just say that it's definitely prioritized everything E on an internal basis. I think everything else that was in the plans has sort of been pushed aside, and the E piece is definitely front and center. And I'm assuming that's for most vendors, publishers.
Yeah, people said it, De Gruyter and others. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. And as I said, we'll kind of write up some notes for to capture this, and hope that people will continue to use Against the Grain and other environments to share information. And I think there's going to be a some follow-up from this conference in the many sessions. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.